Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining BBB for this webinar this afternoon. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. If you run into any audio issues throughout the webinar, try logging off and logging back in. And if that doesn't work, you can always call in using the phone number on your registration email. And should you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them to the chat section and we will get to those at the end. We are excited to have Jim Beachy from Consumers Energy and Stephanie Grace from the Michigan Attorney General's Office joining us today to talk about all things utility scams. Utility scams are something BBB has had reported to us a lot over the last few years, and we are thrilled to have them both here to talk about what to look out for in regards to utility scams and how they can be reported and avoided. And with that, I will turn it over to Jim.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and get a chance to talk with folks in Michigan who are dealing with some of these issues on a regular basis. As Ashley mentioned, I'm Jim Beachy. I lead the security organization at Consumers Energy. So we're a combined physical and cybersecurity team, essentially dedicated to protecting our critical infrastructure assets and the service we provide to Michigan and the customers who receive electricity and natural gas from us. And one of the things we've certainly seen over the past, many years is the rise of utility scams, both against individual residents and against businesses, particularly small businesses. So it's a great opportunity to be here today to talk through this, give you some awareness, some things that we've done, and then how you can best protect yourself and your business. Much of the materials that I've got today, some of the graphics and such, have been created by this group called the Utilities United Against Scams. So there is a consortium of utilities across the country, numbering in the hundreds, who have gotten together and are working as a national consortium to try to work on these issues. And much of the details or the graphics from today's presentation are produced by that group. And I'll have a resource at the end if you're interested in learning more that can share. But a great national organization that's dedicated to working on these issues. So actually, if you go to the first slide, I'll sort of kick off here. Thinking about utility scams, we see a lot of different ways that these scammers are attempting to defraud people. By far, the most prevalent is by phone. It probably wouldn't surprise you that we get a lot of scams through the phone. Those of us who have cell phones, how many of us don't pick up numbers nowadays when we don't know the caller ID? So still predominantly by phone. We do see, though, the occasional more brazen sort of issue where someone is actually coming to your door purporting to be from Consumers Energy or another utility in the state and sort of taking advantage of sort of that physical nature or location. And then, of course, we continue to see email attacks as well. So your traditional phishing email, maybe appearing to come from your utility, appearing to come from somebody that you do business with, attempting to set up these scams. Typically, in these scenarios, in any of these, there's some kind of a threat, some kind of a concern to cause you to have sort of that emotional reaction, some kind of threat. Typically, in our case, to disconnect service. Sometimes it's for an overpaid bill. And if you are a small business owner, oftentimes they will hit you at a time that maybe you're most vulnerable. They'll say, hey, it's 10:30 in the morning, and we're gonna shut off power at noon, right? Timing it to your lunch rush if you're a small restaurant or those kinds of things. And so whenever you see those kinds of signs, it's a good idea to take a step back and think twice about responding. So threats to disconnect, threats, basically requests for immediate payment. And then the other big one we see is payment requests where they're asking you for prepaid gift cards or debit cards. So things like Green Dot cards, even Apple, iTunes cards, things like that, non-traditional forms of payment. And if you're ever asked to make payment in something that kind of raises your eyebrow and makes you wonder, why is somebody asking for this? It's a good sort of indicator that you may be falling victim to a scam. Couple key things: they can fake caller ID. It's actually fairly simple to fake caller ID. Certainly can fake email addresses and the domains that they're sending email from, but probably the biggest lesson from today is that caller ID is not sort of a be-all end-all from a security perspective. You know, and again, that pressure, that sense of urgency, that threatening tone is again something that's typically common with these. And for us, we had 189 scams reported to us in 2021, and this is a number where there was some form of harm done to the individual, payment or you know, something that negatively impacted that person. So these are pretty common, you know, common occurrences. Unfortunately, we are still seeing some of them be successful. I personally have gotten a utility scam call. That was a fun conversation to have with the family listening. But it's a very common thing, and so we want to bring awareness to this topic wherever we can. So Ashley, if we go to the next slide, talk about recommendations here and what you can do to sort of protect yourself and others. And probably the top thing is this non-traditional form of payment. Never pay using any kind of a prepaid credit card, gift card, you know, anything that is asking you to do something outside of what a normal, typical payment channel would be. And the reason they're doing this is because it's a lot easier for them to sort of fake where the money is going from, right? If you're paying with a credit card, you have the opportunity to reverse those charges. You know, the credit card companies follow those transactions because those scammers would have to have some kind of a credit processing function. So it's to the criminal sort of benefit to use these prepaid cards. If you're ever asked to go purchase one in order to pay a bill, you know, in a threatening way, be very suspicious of that. Generally, you know, suspicious of pressure and demands upon you. If you ever do feel suspicious, I really encourage people to hang up and call whomever the vendor, you know, this person is purporting to be. Call that company directly if you're concerned. If it's Consumers Energy, give us a call and check on the status of your account if you need to. You know, if it's another vendor, do the same thing. If you're unsure, it's okay to check. If you're, you know, pretty confident it's a scam, then obviously nothing wrong with just hanging up and moving on. If you're approached in person, you know, the best thing we can suggest is to ask for some kind of company identification. All of our employees are required to have Consumers Energy badge. They should be wearing Consumers Energy gear and have Consumers Energy equipment. It's obviously not always foolproof, but at least asking for a badge or giving some kind of a little bit more of a barrier to that person before you allow them in your business is important. Probably the most important thing I can tell you though today and would recommend to people is take time to talk about these scams with the elderly loved ones in your life. These scammers, yes, we're talking about sort of small business attacks today or Better Business Bureau attacks, but what we see in the vast majority of these attacks are aimed at our elderly community. So anything you can do to help educate people is really appreciated. If there's anything, you know, you learn out of this that you can help share with your loved ones, we would really appreciate it. And then if you do, you know, feel like you sort of are in the midst of a scam or someone is targeting you, you're very welcome to report it to our Security Command Center at the 800 number listed below. We do track these and do what we can to pass along to law enforcement, or it also helps us in notifying other people because when we see these scams, they tend to come in waves. We actually see them even focus on specific geographic regions or counties, and so sometimes we'll get enough of a sense that something's going on that we can make some awareness to either the media or local representatives in that area. So if we can move to the next slide. You know, what is Consumers Energy doing about this? I mentioned this Utilities United Against Scams that we're a consortium of, you know, as a member of, and part of what that consortium is doing is certainly awareness, but it's also to try to figure out how we can best help law enforcement to track some of these things down, especially in scenarios where some of these scams are coming from outside of the U.S. U.S. boundary. So we may be, interfacing with other agencies, FBI and others, to try to find some of these and bring some of these folks to justice. Beyond that, it's really about education. So through our social media channels, through news releases, through events like this, we are putting forth a fair amount of effort to educate and give people awareness of these attacks, because the bottom line is the most effective means of stopping these attacks is education and awareness. As soon as sort of the scammers don't get that return on investment, candidly, they will move on. And so our goal as part of these efforts is to do that education and awareness. And then when we do have something a little more serious, I've got here listed some work we've done in the Flint and Genesee County area. We are, pretty aligned with Crime Stoppers and other sort of law enforcement supporting agencies who do work to provide rewards for specific issues or incidents that we've seen and we're a part of. And we've had some good success there, working with the local communities to find things when they're a little bit more, physical in nature, when there's someone, not just a phone scam, I guess is the right way to put it. So our real focus is on education, awareness, and anything we can do to bring that awareness to this topic so that we can ultimately make these scams and these tactics less profitable for the individuals who are conducting them. And the final slide I've got here is a reference, a resource put forward by this Utilities United Against Scams organization. It's a fairly in-depth guide and really would encourage anyone who is interested in learning more about this topic to check out this guide at the URL we've got listed here. No charge, free of cost, and it's got some great references and some great ideas that you can share both with people in your life, but also with your coworkers, with your employees, those kinds of things, just to bring awareness to these scams so that you personally or your business is not impacted. So I would highly encourage anyone interested to take a look at that. So those are my comments for today. I'm very open to questions either around the scams themselves or any of the topics I've discussed, or if you just have any general questions around security and consumers energy, please put them in the chat and we'll get to them here at the end of the presentation. So look forward to seeing those, and I'll be back to answer any questions at the end of the webinar. So with that, we're going to turn it over to our second panelist today, Stephanie Grace, who's coming to us from the Michigan Attorney General's office. I'm excited to hear their take on this issue and what they're bringing to the fight against scams. So Stephanie, we'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Jim. Welcome, everyone. As stated, my name is Stephanie Grace, and I'm here on behalf of the Michigan Attorney General, Dana Nessel, and also her Consumer Protection team. I work in her Public Information and Education unit, and our main responsibility is to track various scams reported to our office so that we can alert and educate Michigan consumers. A lot of what Jim said is great information. Jim, thank you for putting all that information together for us and sharing it. I find that a lot of what I am going to share will be duplicative in some manner. Again, as Jim stated, the biggest way to avoid becoming a victim of a utility scam, or any scam for that matter, is just to be educated. So Michigan consumers are targeted by utility scams every single day. And in 2021, Attorney General Nessel's Consumer Protection Team and her Robocall Crackdown team received over 200 utility scam complaints. And we also fielded numerous utility scam calls. And these are just the ones that are reported to our office. There are many that go unreported, and there are those that get reported directly to the utility company or other agencies, such as the Better Business Bureau. I'm sorry, I forgot to have you forward the slide. Okay, let's skip one more. Thank you. Our office typically sees an uptick of these types of complaints during seasonal weather changes or following a natural weather disaster, such as maybe a winter storm or excessive rainfall, which we all experienced this past year. They also happen around holidays when people seem to be most distracted. Needless to say, utility scams can and do happen at any time, and we're all potentially a victim. I'm going to have you skip to the next slide. Scammers often target those who are most vulnerable, as Jim said, specifically senior citizens and the low-income communities. They also aim at small business owners, typically during their busiest service hours, in hopes to catch them off guard. Most everyone in the society relies on one or more utility every single day, so this just goes to show that every one of us can be targeted. Next slide. As Jim said, most utility scams do take place by phone, but they may also occur through email, text, or even a personal visit to your home. Scammers impersonate utility company employees in order to create a sense of urgency or make threats in hopes of causing fear and initiating an instant reaction. The goal is to get you to provide immediate payment, financial or personally identifiable information. Utility company impersonators will do or say anything to scare you into giving up this information. They will typically bully consumers, threatening to turn off power, heat, or water at the most inconvenient times. They may be aggressive, stating that payment must be made immediately and be paid in a manner not used by utilities, as mentioned, such as a gift card, maybe a Western Union wire transfer. We've seen Bitcoin or even cash apps like Venmo or Zelle. You may also be just asked to provide your basic bank account or credit card information for payment. However, utility companies may offer you the option to pay over the phone. They will never demand immediate payment over the phone. They will also never do the following. They will never solicit personal information in the name of signing you up for a government program that claims to reduce energy bills. They will never make unannounced visits to collect a bill or threaten shutoff. Utilities will never threaten to disrupt or disconnect service, either in person, over the phone, or by email. All late payment notices are mailed via the U.S. Postal Service and will provide steps to restore the account to good standing. Utilities never show up at your home to inspect or repair equipment, investigate a leak, or do free audit for energy efficiency without some sort of advanced visit notice. They will never request personal or financial information, such as your social security number, a utility account number, or payment information. Instead, customers are typically asked to validate account information such as the billing zip code, the home address, or a home phone number associated with the account. They never claim that you are entitled to a refund or a rebate and ask for bank account information to make the alleged refund. And they will never use aggressive tactics to get into your home. Utility companies do require employees to always wear a company ID badge that will be produced upon request. So we'll move to the next slide. So how do we avoid utility scams? Well, we recommend the following. If you receive a phone call from someone alleging to be from your utility company and they're asking for information that you're not comfortable giving out, simply hang up. You can then initiate direct contact with your utility company using a phone number found on the recent bill or even posted on their website. You should log into your online account, if you have one, to collect more information. And if an alleged employee comes to your door, as Jim said, always ask for identification. You can ask for both employee and personal identification just for the purpose of verifying that's who they are. You should report utility scams to the utility company, as well as to the Michigan Department of Attorney General Consumer Protection Team, which I will provide more information here shortly. What you should not do is provide personal, credit card, or bank account information. You should never pay any alleged outstanding bill by wire transfer or any type of gift or reloadable card or by cryptocurrency. You should never give out utility account numbers, Never allow an alleged utility employee into your home without ID or a confirmed appointment. And never click on a link provided in a text or email claiming to be from your utility company. Next slide, please. For more information on utility scams, you can go to the Michigan Attorney General's Consumer Alert entitled Utility Imposter Scams. This alert shows the many ways scammers work, tips to protect yourself, and how to report scams. The alert has lots of great information on how to avoid becoming a victim and how to report different things. Next slide. You can file a written consumer complaint with the Attorney General Consumer Protection Team by going to our website, shown here. If you have questions or just want to report a scam, you can contact us by phone at the number listed on the screen. The Attorney General website also hosts other resources such as alerts where you will find information on how to avoid different scams. There is a website for robocalls, how to report robocalls and scams, and other consumer-related issues. Last slide, please. The Michigan Attorney General's Office collaborates with other state and federal agencies to share up-to-date information in order to raise awareness and educate Michigan consumers. Awareness and education is a common goal that we all share. As Jim stated, if you can share this information with friends and family to help others avoid becoming a victim, that is wonderful, and we appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Jim and Stephanie. Moving on here, we do have a lot of questions to get to. So I will start off. Here it looks like, Jim, this question is for you. Does Consumers Energy actually have door-to-door sales people?
Oh, door-to-door salespeople, not typically, no. I mean, we have a few areas where we still are doing meter reads, very, very small number. We traditionally have smart meters deployed, so we don't even need to do meter reading anymore, but typically not door-to-door salespeople, no. I'm not aware of a program where we're doing that. We certainly have, with our business customers, more of a relationship where we may be working with folks to do, let's say a lighting program for energy efficiency purposes, or a solar, deployment for their business to help with energy costs, but not, where we're working with that business on a sort of salesperson to company basis, but not door-to-door sales per se. We should not.
Okay, so it looks like we have a follow-up to that then. Would there be any reason that a Consumers Energy employee would show up to your home unannounced?
I would say very rare. There would be instances if certainly in restoration efforts, right? If we have a power outage, certainly you could see crews in the area unannounced. But a pretty rare occurrence. Again, sometimes we have, through the years, we've got like really old buildings where we need access to certain things, even to do maybe some preventative maintenance or those kinds of things. So it's not impossible, but I would say for most of you, it should be a very rare occurrence.
Perfect. And then someone wants to know, you keep talking about, both of you have mentioned high pressure tactics. They would like to know or hear an example of what that could possibly sound like.
Sure. You want me to maybe give one, Stephanie? I can.
Go for it. You get more experience at this than I do.
Yeah, we get plenty of this. So the scenario I gave earlier would be, you get a phone call, you own a small restaurant, you're a pizza shop, and you get a call that says, this is Consumers Energy, you are 3 months overdue on your bill, you owe us $550, and I am going to turn off your power immediately if you don't pay. and you start saying, whoa, hold on, I didn't know, and the person would sort of speak rudely to you, even say like, oh, and by the way, if you don't pay right away, the power's going to be off for an extra 4 days no matter what you do. They kind of would add some extemporaneous threats to the conversation. It's that kind of a pressure. Or in some instances where Stephanie kind of mentioned the personal information, they might say, there's a big problem with your bill. I need you to go get your bill and we need to confirm some information. Can you give me your last name and social security number? Just like sort of, they want you to have that response of, oh no, something's wrong, I need to act, right? It's sort of that like that natural human reaction you have when something bad is happening. And so in those situations, our recommendation is take a step back, take a deep breath. We would never put you under pressure to pay, within hours, within minutes, within days. We have some pretty standard practices for dealing with bill issues. So slow down, take your time, take a deep breath in those scenarios. Any other ideas, Stephanie? Or
well, the one thing I would like to add, because you're representing Consumers Energy, I believe what you said about how you represent your company falls to other companies like Detroit Edison or water companies, your local water companies. I believe that they would all react or act in the same way, the very professional manner that Consumers Energy would. So it's not just, it's all utilities that are typically never going to pressure you into giving out that information.
Agreed. Yeah, and frankly, we're regulated to the point where we have to follow certain rules. If we do get to the point of disconnecting service, it's not an immediate action by any stretch. Good point.
I would like to also add another type of scam we see. It's not really a high pressure one or rude, but one that we've seen recently, probably you've seen it too, Jim, is where they'll call and say, oh, you have an overpayment and we need to reimburse you that amount of money. We appreciate your payment, but can we get your bank account information or credit card so that we can reimburse you that amount? And what you've done is you've given them your bank account information, so now they have access to it.
Yep, that's a good one. We see those as well.
Great. And that kind of leads into another question that was asked. It says, how would Consumers Energy in this case, or any utility company, get a hold of someone if there is actually a problem with their account or their billing?
Yeah, so typically, there's a pretty set process. We certainly would be notifying you by email or by mail, traditional postal mail, that a bill is overdue or we've missed some payments. There's a sort of a multi-step process that we do to notify customers of those issues. So typically via postal mail through your traditional bill channels, or if you signed up for e-bill or text alerts, those kinds of things, we also use those channels as well. And if you were in a scenario where a scammer is contacting you, I mean, one of the other things you can do is register with our website, our online portal, and you can actually go in and check the status of your bill or your last payment. And we recently released a mobile app as well with some of that functionality and capability. So, it's your traditional methods that we would be reaching out. When you get to the place of shut off, there are additional measures, phone calls, those kinds of things. But typically it's a bill in the mail is our primary method of communicating.
All right. And someone wants to know, maybe both of you can comment on this. Have you ever been able to track one of these skimmers?
Stephanie, you want to go first?
Sure. I work in consumer protection and I have for many years. The honest answer would be no. And Jim, you mentioned it before, and that is because they spoof their phone numbers. they impersonate somebody, so they're never going to allow you to see where they're actually calling you from. And as a side note, we don't even know if they're calling you from this country. They could be in another country, another state, obviously another city, making these calls, spoofing the number, which makes it impossible to locate them. You can't trace those calls. We personally haven't been able to track anything as such as that, but we don't really, that's not what our goal is. Basically, we don't have that capability. Maybe the utilities such as Consumers Energy does have that capability. Jim?
Yeah, what I can share with you is Stephanie's right. There's been very limited prosecutions. This consortium that we're talking about is working with the FBI to try to bring a little bit more national awareness and maybe some additional resources to bear, because typically the phone scams are conducted from other countries, and frankly, often from countries that don't have sort of extradition agreements with the U.S. So we are trying to get the attention of, federal law enforcement, but these are sort of, the losses aren't to the level a lot of times where we can get a lot of resources dedicated to them. But that's part of the goal of that larger consortium. We have had some success with scams where people come physically to your business. We've had some arrests, we've had some prosecutions, typically where those scams were looking to conduct some kind of a robbery after the fact, right? They come to the business location and maybe try to leave something open, or leave a back door or a window or those kinds of things. We had a couple challenges with that in the past that we have been successful in prosecutions, and we are more than welcome to, more than happy, I guess, to work with law enforcement when we get those opportunities. So it's a good question. The phone scams, Stephanie's 100% right. Very, very challenging to track.
And kind of going off on that, Stephanie, maybe you can comment on this one. This person says they get a lot of robocalls and they continue to block the numbers that come through. Is it a good idea and useful to keep blocking numbers that come through?
Robocalls, aren't they just so much fun? We all get them, including myself, including the Attorney General herself. Robocalls, you can block them. It doesn't hurt, but it is kind of futile. Again, here's how it works. First of all, let me back up and say we do have a robocall crackdown team, and we have an initiative through the Attorney General's office. We started back in 2019 working with several federal agencies, including the U.S. Telecom Service. In order to track down where some of these robocalls are coming from. So we do have a reporting system on our website where you can report those robocalls, and we take that data and share it with U.S. Telecom System, who will then try to track these calls. The problem is that the calls are being made via computer and software that allows them to make thousands of calls per minute with a faked phone number. Now, out of those 1,000 calls they make, if they get 5 people to answer the phone, that's a bonus for them. And even out of those 5 people, if they get 1 person to fall for the scam that they're perpetuating, they've won. They've won. So our advice is just not to answer those calls. If you have an app, or if you don't have an app on your phone, excuse me, that allows you to block those calls, I would go ahead and download an app. That's probably the best way right now. But again, we are working with federal agencies to locate, track, and stop the robocallers. That's the best I can give you at this point.
Perfect. So is it beneficial for robocall numbers to be reported to you then?
Absolutely. Again, when that data is reported to us, we do share it with U.S. Telecom. If it's reported within a couple of hours and we can share it with US Telecom within 3 to 5 days, they have the ability to do tracebacks. And again, because they're made by a computer, they have to use IP addresses and not a phone for these tracebacks. But yes, we have had some success and prosecuted organizations that work outside the country. Like Jim said, we also work with the FBI, the FTC, other federal agencies that are able to work with agencies in other countries to prosecute groups of people. And we've actually stopped companies here in the United States that are illegally doing business robocalls or telemarketing, illegal telemarketing calls.
Great. And Jim, this question is for you. This person wants to know, does Consumers Energy send advertising in the form of mailers? So if something comes in the mail that's an advertisement from you guys, is it legitimate?
Yeah, we do. Typically, they're for sort of services that are sort of adjacent to our traditional utility service. So we do. We have a lot of programs, and frankly, as we continue to think about what the energy grid of the future looks like, both from a greener resources, solar and wind, but also how do we make the grid as efficient as possible? When you think about electric cars and when do we charge them, and how do we build the grid that will function as in the future, you're going to see more programs from us, frankly, not necessarily less. So we do send mailers. If you're ever confused, the thing that I would say to you is any of those sort of services or product offerings can also be found on our main website. So if you're ever wondering, is this really Consumers Energy? You should be able to find all those, by going directly to our site. But we do send those periodically to you.
Okay, perfect. And this person wants to know, if I'm signed up to receive emails or text messages from consumers, how can I be sure that a link that is sent is legitimate?
Yeah, this is a big challenge. This is my security world right now, right? How do we, for us internally, how do we teach employees what's safe and what's not? There's a couple things that you can look for. The big thing is to make sure that the first thing would be to make sure that sender of that message is from a source that you trust, that the domain name that's used, consumersenergy.com or cmsenergy.com, is legitimate. It's not that those can't be faked, but that's sort of a step one. The second thing would be to, when you look at an email that comes in, when you see a link in the email, you can use your mouse and kind of hover over the link. You don't actually click, you just kind of move your mouse over the link and make sure that as best as you can, where when you hover over it, it'll show you where you're actually going when you click, and make sure that it looks like those are trusted resources. And then I would use the same example, coming to our website, any promotion that we're sending in an email, those programs should be available also on our website with the same sort of offers and rebates. And look, I'll be very honest with you that making a sort of good-looking professional marketing email and frankly a scam phishing email, they can look very similar, and it's a big challenge. So my biggest sort of suggestion is that hovering and then coming to our website if you're unsure, or you could contact us. I got this program information in the mail, or I got this email from you. I'd like to learn more. Is this a legitimate program? You could go that path as well.
Great. And then it looks like this is our last one for the moment, but they would like to know, if Consumers does text me containing a link, what would be the reason for it?
Yeah, the reason, I believe, and I believe that we will, when we text you, typically if there's a link, it's going to be some kind of an outage alert where we can redirect you or show you where our your outage status is, our outage map. We have a map that shows sort of where current power outages are, those kinds of things. I don't believe, and I'm trying to rack my brain here, I don't believe that when we send you a sort of payment text that there are any links, but if it was, it would be just a generic reference to get to our website or our portal. So I don't think there should be any, any real reason to click on those types of things. And the biggest thing to watch out for would be a text that redirects you somewhere outside of, not to the Consumers Energy website. That's the biggest thing to look for. Hopefully that's helpful. I'm trying to look through my text to see if I have one right now, but I don't believe there's a link in our payment text.
Okay, perfect. People are always looking out for those malicious links. So
absolutely.
All right. Stephanie, did you have anything you wanted to add about, malware and links and things like that?
Jim covered quite a bit of it. Sometimes we'll suggest when there's a link, I think you mentioned this already, Jim, but just you can Google whatever the topic of your text or email is and find out more information about it that way. Or type in the link address directly without clicking on it and see what comes up that way. That way you're less likely to be a victim of a malware downloading.
Yeah, good suggestion. And I did just confirm our bill texts do not have any links. So it's simply your address, the total due, and the due date in those texts.
It's usually just like a notification saying maybe check your account.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Precisely.
Perfect. Well,
can I just throw out?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
We were talking about robocalls. I just kind of want to redirect back to that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put that information in this how to report it in this webinar. I really didn't know how much of it we would actually cover, but if people do want to report robocalls to our office, I recommend you do. It's real simple. Just go to mi.gov/robocalls with an S on the end, and it will take you to a survey where you will provide the information that we need.
Great, perfect. I might use that myself, so.
I do myself as well.
Yes, absolutely. All right, well, that looks like all the questions we have for the moment. As we wrap up here, if any more come through, I'll be sure to get to them. One thing I wanted to mention on BBB's behalf really quickly is we also have a resource where you can report any type of scam you may come across. It's our BBB Scam Tracker. You can also use this to look around in your local area and see what scams are popular. If we're having a phase, like Jim mentions, they kind of go in ebbs and flows. So we may see utility scams for a while there, and then they may die down a bit, and then they'll spike back up. So you can use this and look at what scams are in your local area. And this is data that we harness and we share with the Attorney General's office. And I know, Jim, you're interested in this data as well in terms of utility scams. So this is just another reporting resource to hopefully, keep track of what's going on. So if you were interested, it's bbb.org/scam tracker. And then I just wanted to pass along our BBB contact information. If you have any questions about any utility scams or different scams that pop up, we're here to help. If you have any additional questions that we didn't get answered today, you can forward them my way, and I'll be sure to get in contact with Jim and Stephanie if I need answers from them. But other than that, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you so much, Jim and Stephanie, for joining us. We really appreciate the insight, and I hope everybody has a fantastic day.